Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. We are invited again to a journey of self-reflection, self-exploration. But even more than that, what began last night as our initial foray into understanding our deeper self, or what we might call our authenticity or our soul, that sacred spark of light, of nur within us. Today we will explore how we actually live through our lives with regard to recognizing that we are a being, our essential nature, being composed both of spirit and of our physical being, which in reality are actually one. There is no separation at the ultimate level of identifying ourselves as the great diwan of Sheikh Muhammad ibn Habib had described in one of his songs, that we are meanings, or we are spirit, essence, contained in form. And so the form, and it's by virtue of the spirit of life, of divine presence within us, that animates us and gives us vitality and existence in this world, which would only be possible having the containment or the temple of a body in which the soul permeates every cell of our being. And even more elegantly than that, if we allow ourselves to expand, to keep an open mind and a pure heart, and allow that state of being to be surrendered into our deepest self, we would find that there is in fact nothing other than light and energy that is the foundation of the universe, the fabric of this universe. And the new sciences of quantum physics are striving to define this and create a cosmology around it. So we are in the early stages in the outer disciplines of science, approaching what the prophets and the mystics always knew to be true and real. And it's nice that both our inner intuition, our inner knowledge, and the outer information are coming together as one. So when we speak about Tawheed, or unity, or the oneness of all existence, we are actually not only approaching it in our life as cognitive beings, discussing the life sciences outside ourselves, as well as templating it with what we know in our heart, in our the very marrow of our bones to be the truth. So it's a very exciting adventure that we are born into, and we have a choice to either, carpe diem, seize the moment and live the adventure, or to continue to swim on the ocean of divine knowledges, the surface of life, which I did for many years until I had a near-death experience at the age of 9, almost drowning in the Pacific Ocean. In fact, I thought I had drowned, and it was so peaceful and beautiful in the end. But then we get cast up on shore again and spew out the oceans of water that we swallowed, and we're back in this space-time existence. And when you return from either a life-shattering experience like that, or prayer, or deep meditation, or desire for truth, or commit to the search for meaning in life and the quest for truth, something shifts in you, and we more easily can return back to being open-minded and keeping the heart pure, letting go of the rust and the other desires and expectations that we have filled ourselves with. A taste of truth always overcomes everything else, greater than everything else. So we say Allahu Akbar. Allah is greater, not the greatest, but anything we can think of, there is something greater. And that is the one truth or God or the one divine reality. Yeah. So it's lovely that it is not fixed, because we have the potential for expansion without limit. The only limitation is our physical part of ourselves. But where consciousness, the mind, where spirit in us takes on this commitment to the journey of life, there are no limits. As Rumi said, the only limits in this garden of the world are in your mind. So we will see how we can return to that boundless origin of ourselves, and that requires loyalty to keeping your heart pure and your mind a clean mind. We can translate this into saying, just keep an open heart. Because when we go deeply into our dhikr of remembrance of God or mindfulness meditation practices, what happens is the intellect and the body and the emotions of the heart all become one. That's a tawheed we talk about. That's what we strive for, where there's no separation in us, thinking one thing and striving for another. So we can see the elegance of the way this experience of life itself has been made, because the cosmology is seamless. You know, there are no faults, there are no missing parts in the wholeness and completeness of life itself and of each of us. Each of us. We are already whole and complete in our essence. And the only practice or work in this life really is to return to that place. Then you see life differently, and you transact in your relationships and your love commitments differently, and the way you live your daily life every minute in this world becomes your worship. There's no Sunday, Friday, or Saturday. Everything is worship. So, you know, I sit here, I'm sitting and I'm talking, and I'm conveying information and knowledge which I love, but the intention behind it, behind this form doing that, is a desire to share what I love, and to be mindful that every word I utter can never be taken back. So before we speak, we're always checking with the clear mind, pure heart, even if it's not always in that absolute state, but the attempt, the commitment is there. And that's where we begin. So there's loyalty to radiating your meaning in this life. That's all we can do. You know, we can't change the people we love. We can't master the universe. We can't really train our children, I'm afraid. We can give them good values and we can model good behavior, but they have their own destinies. So all we can do, all we have, what is it? What is it? We don't have thoughts, because we have a thought and they go, and we can let go of them. We don't have possessions, because I was given a very beautiful glass vase in emerald green with 24 karat gold lettering on it. And I had the 7 master names of God in each of the decorative aspects of this beautiful glass vase. And it's traveled with me to 3 different continents, to 3 different homes. And before I left, my maid, in her good intention to keep the house clean and a place where we can pray on the carpets and so on, cleaned that glass vase and it broke. So that was such a lesson because it was one of my beloved pieces. And when I looked at it, it came back again to me that it's one of Sheikh Fadlallah Haeri's really masterful teachings about what it is that we truly love in this world. So I thought it was the object itself. It was handled with more care than a baby, I think, wrapped and double wrapped and triple wrapped on my travels. But in fact, even with that gone and shattered in pieces beyond being repaired, I realized I can still see it. I can still read the 7 mother names in the name of Allah at the forefront. I can almost feel it actually, because sensation is in consciousness. It's not actually in the outer. We touch this, but the whole processing of feeling is done somewhere else. And then the entire universe becomes almost not magical. It's almost sublime in what is creation after all. It's beyond matter. So the beauty of the vase and the meaning is what I treasured, because it no longer exists, but I still have it. It's still giving me joy. I can still refer to it. So how would our lives be if we lived, if I were more mindful and I could live this way more consistently? These are the lessons that the revelations of God in every different language and religion try to convey to us. So the Quran is not a book. It's not even revelation. It was living vibration from a source beyond this world that gave us this incredible possibility to live as human beings. So if you don't read the Quran, there's no Quran. It's not a book wrapped in green on your shelf. It doesn't exist. It only becomes real when we accept it, when we take it on, when we say it's going to be useful for me. I may not believe in God, I may not believe in anything religion says, but this sounds good. I can heal my friendships. I can see my enemy as a friend. I can live comfortably like a king. And if all of it is swept away, I'm still a king. I'm not diminished. But what I have or don't have. And nothing can define me other than my essential being as a manifestation, as a spark of the divine light of God. That's all we are. We carry the spark, and that's what gives us experience in this life. So what do we have? What do we have? My health may go, but I'm still alive. I'm still here. My possessions may go, but I'm still enjoying them. So all we have really is our consciousness, or we can say our mind, but I don't mean the small mind. Well, it's part of it. All we have is mind, consciousness, and awareness. We have to think about it. If we define the quality of our life, am I awake or asleep? And I mean metaphorically. Am I listening or am I distracted? What is the quality of my marriage, my relationship? When you explore all of that, we realize that we are interpreting and experiencing through. If we're in a coma, there's no experience of any interactional value, correct? So when we apply consciousness into all aspects of our life, we then come up with a definition of the things we value, our principles, the kind of life, the quality of life we want. So by recognizing that consciousness is the key and the foundation and the window, the door through which we can either come alive or not, then the choice is basically just one. You know, do we awaken or do we remain a bit like sleepwalkers? And perhaps that's why in this day and age, you know, all these movies about zombies and robots are so popular, because sometimes one feels like that. So again, we have a choice, and sometimes we can't make a choice because it seems like two difficult things. If I wake up, that means everything will change, and it's a responsibility on me. If I remain as I am, well, I'm not too bad gliding through life. I have a decent job, family, and so on. So we do nothing until the generosity of the universe really throws a spanner into the works in your life. There's some crisis, some hardship, some loss, and through that, it shakes, it jolts us awake. And through that, we come to saying, you know, it's time. Something has to change. It's times of change, and I'm going to do it today. And the moment we make that commitment, something shifts. And you can filter your life then through what we call perhaps soul vision, or through the filter of pure heart, clean mind, because there are moments when we actually become that. Maybe we've been in prayer, or we've been in deep spiritual practice, and everything else has no concern any longer. Things disappear, and so we. You know, I always say, if we are meeting together, we've all had those moments, and sometimes we're not aware of what that was. Therefore, the journey in this life would be to master time, so that those blissful moments of pure vision, of pure sight, clean sight, happen without too long a gap between each one. So I use an example of maybe mea culpa, me being at fault of maybe unintentionally or intentionally saying something disagreeable to another human being. And let's say I was rude to my aunt, and I find it difficult to apologize because I'm too proud, or I feel, no, it's not my mistake, it's her problem. So I don't resolve that, and therefore I carry the piece of luggage with me through the day. And it's not comfortable, because there are valid things one can carry, the joy, the happiness, and so on. You know, why carry an issue? So before I go to bed at night, I have a practice, and it's based on a practice by a Sufi sect called the Malamatiya. And it's called the blameworthy self. Before they retire for the night, they review their day. And if there's anything that needs to be rebalanced, apologies made. They clear that before going to bed. So God forbid, if anything happens, you've cleared negative karma. You've cleared carrying any of that into your next life. So in a small, I didn't know about the Malamatiya when I started this practice, but it's very human to say, why should I live with negativity when it can be cleared? So it might take by nightfall before I call my aunt and say, please excuse me, I didn't mean it, forgive me, I'm sorry. Then the next day I say, well, if this happens again, I'm not going to wait all day, but I'll do it, you know, right away. So I may wait an hour. But eventually you create a whole neural pathway in your being where your response has the shortest time between altercation or problem and resolution, which means you you create some unfortunate incident and you immediately apologize for it, or say, I'm sorry, or let me help you there. And when we do that, we've transcended time. It's almost instantaneous. And again, in Tasawwuf, in Sufism, there's a name for this. It's called the saint or the wali or the enlightened one, who is Ibn al-Waqt, child of the moment. And the moment is the present moment, it's the now. It's not about time. So we combine our life transactions so that there's a clearing for pure heart and clean mind consistently throughout the day. It's a wonderful practice. You have to really be mindful of what we do. And it's not as though we're going to apologize to everyone in existence, because sometimes you're rushing for a train and you bump into each other. It's natural. But I'm speaking about intent. When we do things intentionally, it takes away from us and it creates unnecessary issues. And if it's resolved right away, then it neutralizes the universe and it doesn't follow you. So that is one way that is a practice to be of clean mind and pure heart. The wonderful discoveries being made in neuroplasticity, for example, brain research, is that we can continually learn and grow. The brain does not stop developing to learn new skills. And that's marvelous, because when I grew up, we were taught that you can't teach old dogs new tricks. Has anyone heard that? Yeah. But you can, you see. Now they've discovered that, that the brain is always, that the vehicle for our consciousness, in terms of our physical body, can always take on new habits and allow old habits to die. So the process for that is we recognize a habit that was once useful, but we've outgrown it, or it no longer is something that we want in our life. So we simply take on a new practice every time there's an impulse to fall back into what I call the default, my default self, because it's comfortable, easy, I've done it before. And I said, no, I'm done with that. So immediately I see the trigger and I take on to starting a new practice consistently. After a while, it can be 3 weeks, it can be, depending on the severity of the habit. There was a test done in Scandinavia, interestingly enough, and it took 8 months for this control group to overcome an addiction. But imagine the rest of your life, you're smoke-free, drug-free, drink-free. Because their response now to stress or anything challenging is not to reach for the bottle or for the cigarette, but to do something else, either, whatever it was, work in the garden, meet a friend. And so again, this shows the generosity of the way that we are created. So in a sense, there is no excuse you can make to the universe, to God, that has not been anticipated and given us a way out of it to create the quality of life we want. And all it requires is being at attention, is being conscious, being in conscious awareness, being aware, paying attention. That's all we need to change our lives. And it's free. Yeah, we didn't ask for it, and we have it. We have it. All right. So today, returning to the one, everything in the universe, everything that's happening in your life, without exception, is an opportunity to return back to God, back to the one, back to your higher self, back to pure heart. And you will prove it to yourself, you will find your own evidence of that by the next practice we're going to do, which is called the story, your life story as a timeline. So again, we need paper and pencil for this. And if you would,
table in the back, is paper
if you would take a sheet of paper horizontally and just begin with birth, you can put your birth date as a dot, and reflect on what were the significant or important events in your life that we consider, oh, something shifted here, or that was life-changing, or that made a huge impact on me. So you trace it along, identifying each event, and you can put your age, if you like, approximately 5 or 6, approximately late teenage, 18 or 19, and just carry on until you reach the point where you're sitting here today. All right? This is an invitation to do that if you would like to participate. And we can take some time now. Thank you, Alyssa. Okay. So, you may reflect on your timeline and identify, maybe putting a circle around it, some marking which may be an incident or incidents or events that you might like to explore further. Every so often something pivotal that happened to us is rather straightforward, clear-cut, all right, and that you feel a sense of acceptance without any further deepening of thought, or you may have gone through that. But if there are any moments in your timeline that you would like to come to a deeper clarification or understanding, just identify those. Mm-hmm. Good. And when you have completed that, again, we are going to work in groups of 2, in pairs. So it would be good to work with someone different than your partner last night, but it doesn't really matter. And if you would then each take your turn in going through the timeline with a comment, whatever comment you want to assess to each event. And you might find that your partner that you're working with might have a question that may actually open it or deepen it for your understanding. But to go through particularly those turning points, those events that you have circled, but to just cover the entire sweep of your lifeline up until now. Okay? So we'll take about 10, 12 minutes for that, 15 minutes maybe. But just moving around the room, one felt some very, very interesting, good energy, I would say, in the animation of the voices as you were sharing. And I wondered if anyone would like to share what you may have gained from this process. Or was there a new insight into understanding how you arrived to where you are at the present moment? Did something forgotten come back to mind? And equally importantly, going through your lifeline, this timeline, was there a sense of almost, marveling at how extraordinary that I was born halfway across the world and what led me to where I am at the moment, and perhaps how each incident impacted on me that made me maybe take a right turn rather than a left turn from what would have been expected earlier in your life. Would anyone like to say a few words to share some of their experience? Yes, Wabia.
It was very interesting. I have never thought about my journey since I was born like that. But I felt like I have been traveling all the time. Now that I have written from birth to different stages. When I left Yemen, I was 5. And I went to live in Iraq. And I look back, how shocked I was to leave an extended big family, with uncle and cousins, living in the same compound, and moving into a to Iraq, living a nuclear family, mother and father, no relatives, empty Eids, like although you have the neighbors are kind and people are kind in Iraq, but it's not the same. And then my journey continues like this, you know, until I was 13. And it's the same thing, same struggle that if you look back. And then when I settled in England, I thought that's it. I will now continue to live in England and not go anywhere. But then I came to Sweden, and the same pattern come back. It's interesting that you have asked that question. And I never thought I would ever leave England for any other reasons. But for me, one of the most important events in my life, for me, was actually having Selma. It was a very beautiful experience to be a mother and to dedicate my life and give up my job and my family in London and take, you know, my biggest investment in my life. So it's interesting how your priorities really develops as you get older as well and change. So it has been kind of trouble all the time, struggle in a way, inner struggle, you can say.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. It just shows how little in control we are. And it's only when you reflect back that you see there might be a pattern and some other influence coming into our life. And then it makes it exciting, you know, to see what has actually happened to bring you here and what each turning might have done to our thinking about life and the way we look at life and the choices we make. Thank you for that. Sheikh Muslim, would you like to share?
Yeah, it's nothing I'd really thought of as sort of one of these turning points in my life, and I hadn't actually remembered the event until something that Dr. Aliya said before we started this exercise about nearly drowning. That when I was 12, I spent my summers in England from I was 12 till I was 16, 5 summers on the trot, more or less on my own, stayed with a British family and spending some time with other Englishmen. I ignored the other Swedes who went on the same sort of language exchange program. I just stayed with the Englishmen or the Brits. But that first year, we stayed on the east coast of England, and with some friends we went to explore some old, almost ruined building, a big mansion. And the floorboards were rotted away, but the beams that hold up the floorboards were still there. So we, being as we were, 12-year-olds, we walked along those beams in this big building. And I remember I fell off the beam. But something lifted me up and put me back on the beam. And it was so vivid, and I was like that. It was, even then I remember now, I thinking that there must be some purpose with my life, otherwise this wouldn't have happened. I would have just died here. But it was just that. I don't know if I would have died if I fell down, I have no idea, but that's what I thought at the time anyway. That was and it's fantastic, and it's a memory I had really kind of lost, you know, I not remember this for decades, this event. So that was an experience, something that came out of this, sort of a reclaiming a memory that I kind of had lost. And I think we all have many of these.
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it speaks for itself. Yeah. Is there anyone else who'd like to? Please.
Similarities in our sharing, and we were surprised that each transformation, it felt like there were specific times where, for myself, I was called back to myself, not to get lost in outside responsibilities, expectations, all of that. There were key, significant parts in my life that turned things around back to myself. And, you know, not just say that it was the same for yourself, although very different stories, but the same kind of punctuations that happened in our lives and brought us back to ourselves again.
It was very interesting that we happened
to share together, and so,
because it was so there were so many things.
so many similarities. Not in the outer things so much, but the calling back.
The way you responded to what happened to
Absolutely.
you.
And
So,
I mean, with myself, there was disillusionment, bewilderment. What is this, you know? And that seemed to be key at each time. And there was a lot of pain during that time. This is something we discovered, is that all of those significant times involved quite a bit of pain, but it was really pivotal at that time. So
gosh.
I suppose something responding to us.
All right. Yeah, it's. Thank you very much, by the way. And the turning back to yourself is so beautiful, because something in you knows that you're going to. That's where you're going to find resolution. I mean, it's almost instinctive. That's wonderful. Did you find this exercise useful? Okay, good. All right. It probably raises more questions than gives us answers. And that's a good thing as well, because at 3 o'clock we'll do the next workshop. Oh, no, sorry, yeah, 3 o'clock, where we will use one of your incidents for the group process. Right? Very good. So thank you very much. If there's anyone else who'd like to say anything to bring this into closure. But the value also of doing this timeline is we often forget how quickly time passes. So when you're in the moment, or let's say when we're not in the moment, but at the time it happens, it feels like, oh, when will it ever end? It seems to be interminable, right? It goes on, and somehow we feel there's so much time. Even if we're rushed, we take time for granted. And only when you look back, you see, 2/3 of your life has passed. And it also brings another sense of priority into saying, I have so much energy and so much time. We don't know, it could be another 100 years, but we begin to value much more the awareness of our experience in this life, without anxiety, but to become really accountable. How am I using myself in this life? And that's where our meaning arises, when we bring ourselves in some important way to ourselves. Doesn't matter if you're a gardener or you're a nuclear physicist, it doesn't matter. But it's how you bring yourself into this world, and just the awareness that each present moment is eternal, and at the same time, outwardly, the time is moving in one direction. And that's the glory of this life, is to bring value and significance into how you leave your footprint in this world, if you like, and your meaning. So thank you very much again, and God willing, we meet again at 3 o'clock. Okay, salam alaikum.